our last video, we exposed serious security issues affecting over 800 million users and allowing us to directly steal money from one of the world's largest online platforms. We reported them responsibly and were ignored. So we looked again. We found even more. We reached out everywhere we could, just asking for one thing: when will this be fixed? Instead, our messages were deleted, we were blocked, and the company publicly called our reports spam. Worse yet, they lied to their users' faces about it when questioned, despite the vulnerabilities, including conditional one-click account takeover, remaining unfixed. Since they have publicly called us malicious attackers, take a look at our attempts to first have the issues resolved, spanning half a year. Fotor know objectively that we are not malicious. They are running damage control at our expense and yours, because they don't care about security. They do not care about you as a user. They care about preserving their reputation and profitability. If you get hacked in the process, well, that's the sacrifice they're willing to make. This is the story of what happens when the people trying to help are treated like the problem. And a warning to Fotor users with evidence of gross negligence and laughable incompetence. A few weeks ago, one of our researchers that goes by the name Volt decided to do some extra recon. After all, it's simply impossible to exhaustively hunt on such large platforms. Even when we spend weeks engaging a target, there's always something left hiding in the cracks. In this pursuit, he found a handful of subdomains on the website that we hadn't previously touched, and let the team know that there was some fresh attack surface to poke at. Myself, Ton of Bricks, had been working on one of our many in-house tools, namely our web scanning framework known as RNA. Figuring it would be a good opportunity to test some new features, I dumped the list of subdomains into RNA and let it run in the background for a while, not expecting much. Oh, how wrong I was. Tabbing back into my terminal window, I was greeted with a towering wall of findings, from mundane things like server version info to the more severe like private API keys and leak credentials. Among these raised flags, one phrase caught my eye: S3 bucket credentials. Now, an S3 bucket is a type of cloud storage hosted by Amazon and generally used to host various resources like images. Digging into the source that was flagged, my attention was drawn to one that contained the word mobile in the title, with 3 funny little words attached: secret access key. Testing whether these credentials were still valid, we were surprised to find that they had expired and could no longer grant us access. There was, however, a second set of credentials paired with the leak. In contrast, those had a hard-coded identity pool ID. Because these credentials had not been revoked in Amazon Cognito, we were able to assume temporary access roles, giving us full read, write, update, and delete permissions. In effect, this gave us full control over their mobile application S3 bucket. We have redacted the credentials because they are still usable via Cognito, and because contrary to Fotor's claims, we don't wish for anyone to use the information we are providing maliciously. We only seek to help their users remain secure because they refuse to. Inside, there was a bounty of sensitive information, including P12 files that often contain secret keys or certificates for cryptographic purposes, .auth files containing even more sensitive information. Most harrowingly of all, there was an APK file that contained their mobile app for Android users labeled beta. And finally, every version of their mobile application for their Android app, with over 10 million downloads. As harmless as this might seem at first glance, with us having the ability to create and modify files, we could have uploaded our own malware embedded into that APK. When uploading an app to the Google Play Store, its signature is verified with a cryptographic key generated by the legitimate developer and stored in a PKCS number 12 archive, i.e. a .p12 file. Lucky for any hypothetical attacker, that was simply sitting in the exact same bucket. If the person in charge of updating their app on the Play Store uploaded that APK, our malware would be pushed to every one of their users upon updating the app. In other words, we had a decent chance at turning the over 10 million mobile devices that had this app on it into one of the world's largest botnets. Given the scale of such an attack, it is highly likely that some compromised devices would contain extremely sensitive information, extending beyond personal photos or financial data to corporate or government secrets. This AI media generation platform dropped the ball so hard, it constituted a multinational crisis. Of course, if you've been following our work, you know that we always operate in good faith. We never read, modified, or downloaded any of the files contained. In addition to this, another researcher, Witchdoc, had previously seen that they were using the Swagger API on their store and test store subdomains. Recent versions are vulnerable to a CVE that takes advantage of the outdated DOM Purify library, which did not mitigate parser context attacks using the mathml HTML tag. Throwing a template payload at it, it popped a dialog window in his browser, confirming reflected XSS. Importantly, session cookies were stored as HTTP only, thus we couldn't steal them directly without finding a valid bypass or an exploit to chain with, meaning it had the same impact as the XSS we found previously on their CDN, such as drive-by malware downloads. Regardless, this is another example of the utter disregard for user security on display here. We quickly went about reporting this again via the support email provided on their website, and once again received an automated response. Realizing the dire urgency of these vulnerabilities, Witchdoc took the additional step of identifying their Discord and politely attempting to contact staff to ensure this would not be ignored for months as our previous reports were. Initially, staff seemed keen to help, thanking him for the report and letting him know that it had been escalated to their team. He then asked if it was possible for us to get any sort of ETA on when these vulnerabilities would be patched, as our standard 3-month disclosure period for the first report had already elapsed. He even kindly offered to extend it before we published our video, which was already nearly finished. Subsequently finding himself blocked by the staff member, his messages on their public Discord deleted, and the very same staff member publicly telling their Discord that it was just a spam message. Later, our first video found its way onto their Discord, and users were rightfully curious about the status of their account security. Not only did staff dismiss the credibility of the video, but certain members posted evidence of DMs where staff claimed there was no risk to account security, despite none of the vulnerabilities being mitigated. This speaks volumes, at best, to the ignorance of the team even when given almost half a year of disclosure on this information, and at worst, blatant lying to save face. Baffled at the incredible disrespect we were shown, our only ethical recourse was to immediately begin working on our next video, so we could warn users of their negligence and hope that whoever was receiving these reports had the wherewithal to realize their severity. A bit of cursory research brought to light that this was not just a one, or in this case, 2-time incident. In 2020, security researchers discovered that Fotor was hosting a database without any sort of authentication. This resulted in sensitive PII being leaked for over 13 million users. In short, this isn't just a series of isolated mistakes. This is a systematic pattern of negligence. After their dismissive response, they appeared to take some limited action, simply returning a 403 forbidden page on the subdomains we had reported. But this even further demonstrates their incompetence, because despite forbidding the vulnerable location on their store page, their test store page is still up with the reflected XSS and uses the exact same cookies, which means there is no difference in impact. Of course, both subdomains were mentioned in our report. The cherry on top? They still haven't even revoked access to the leaked credentials giving us access to their S3 bucket. They've simply hidden the page containing them. Both of the attacks we've reported are still as viable as the day we found them. If you have the Fotor app downloaded on your phone, or frankly, any account related to them which contains sensitive or personally identifying data, we would strongly recommend deleting all of it. If you have questions, skepticism, or concerns about these vulnerabilities, feel free to join our public Discord and discuss with us. For now, we're done hunting on this website. We've seen enough to know that our efforts are better spent on platforms that will respect the time and effort we put into our work. But that doesn't mean we're cooling down. We've got plenty more stories to tell, and we'll never stop hunting for more. So, my friends, stay safe, stay vigilant, and we'll see you next time.